horse can be obedient and still not feel safe. A horse can perform and still not trust us. And a horse can be labeled difficult when it's actually confused, afraid, physically uncomfortable, or simply unprepared for what is being asked. Today, I'm joined by Scott Purdum to look beyond the labels we place on horses and explore what their behavior may really be trying to communicate. We'll be talking and looking into confidence, trust, preparation, and why understanding the reason behind a behavior can completely change the relationship between the horse and the rider. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to get straight into it, and I'm going to ask if there is a particular horse who first challenged the way you understood behavior and made you begin to ask a different question.
That is that is a resounding yes. I had a I had a horse. I kind of always talk about it like a turning point story. And I think in every person's life there is, especially trainer's life, there's always some kind of turning point story. And I had one that I'll try to go through it quickly, because otherwise I can get on a very long tangent here. But I was I don't know if you can ever imagine like an egotistical teenager out there before, right? I was one of those. I grew up in the horse industry. I was hunter jumper for, most of my life. And um but I knew I still needed to learn a few things. So I went and interned with someone and really great hand, but I still thought I was like a great rider. I thought I was God's gift to horses, right? And that's important to understand that I was egotistical because that's part of this turning point. So the gentleman was going to be gone for the day, and he asked me to ride this horse. It had been ridden about six other times before, and it was freshly started, mind you. So I say six times. It's only had six rides on it. So I said, of course, I'll go ride it while you were gone. So I'm on this horse in a round pen, and I'm doing everything that he asked me to do, and I start loping. And the horse is loping around and trips, falls down to his knees. Now, when he falls down to his knees, all of that is fine. He goes onto his face, but then he gets up and he scares himself. So the whole process scared him, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But when it scared him, he then started taking off bucking. And when he started taking off bucking, um, again, that egotistical part, I thought I could ride it out. I'm doing good. I'm riding out one lap. I'm riding out two laps. I'm thinking, go ahead, buck harder. I got this, right? On the third lap, however, he started figuring out something different. He started figuring out how to suck his belly up to loosen the girth overall. So I then quickly realized that I was not staying on, and instead of my attention being on how to stay on, my attention turned into which round pen panel I was coming off on. And I found one. I did one of those like hook my arms over top of it, slid off the back. The saddle went underneath of the belly, and the when I came off again, that egotistical part still important to the story. What emotion was I feeling? Do you think? Anger. I was feeling anger. I was like, how dare this thing? Like that's not okay. Um, there should be no horse getting me off. So I fixed the saddle, right? Put it back up, and I ran him. And I just chased him around the round pen for like 15 minutes straight. And I said, I tightened that cinch up and I said, if you can breathe, you're lucky, sucker. And then I got back on and I said, let's lope off. Wrong decision
Mm.
because he immediately started bucking again. And it didn't take him three laps in order for him to figure out how to suck his belly up. The 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 irony or coincidence, whatever you may call it, was I came off on the same exact round pen panel twice within 15 minutes, and saddle went underneath the belly. But here's where the turning point was: the second time falling off within 15 minutes. I had now gone through, in my mind, everything in which I thought I knew. So the
Mhm.
emotion changed. The emotion went from anger to then fear. For the first time, I truly felt fear with the horse. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I fixed the saddle, I ran him around a little bit, not that much. I got back on him. I could feel him trembling, shit, I was trembling. And I just walk jogged him. I got off because I could feel that something would go down if I loped off again. And I put him away. I didn't know what to do. I was my world had shifted. My world had changed. And it was an amazing change. And because that was the moment where I realized I need to I need to be able to overcome something, especially if my goal is to ever be able to help people overcome it. So what I did was I went and I bought the horse that was there in training. And I don't know why it had to be a horse that humbled me. That was a very expensive horse at the same time to make me go broke, but I bought him, and I don't generally advise for people to do this, mind you. And it took me about a year on my own to kind of figure out how to work through it. And I'm not saying that I knew everything within the end of that year, but I sure shit figured a lot of things out and started my own new journey. So, my long short of this is I did have a horse that humbled me massively, that changed everything in the entire direction of my my career.
So many questions to ask. I really there's so much from what you're saying, especially that kind of initial response of anger, of like, I think if most of us would relate to that, how we first get taught as well, coming up through the years of like, don't let them do that. That's misbehaved. They must do what you want. And it goes into another conversation topic about control. Like you must always
Mm.
have control, which is this illusion, right? When fundamentally in reality, we're with a horse,
You don't have control.
unpredictable flight animal. Um, but yeah, let's just to stay on track with that story. So when you bought this horse for a year, um, what did you do? Because obviously you had this realization of I'm a little bit scared. And I think
Yeah,
once we have that shift as riders, I see this a lot with even some of the women I work with their health. They'll say to me, I never used to have this anxiety or fear when I was in my 20s or 30s. Suddenly, I just, it's like something comes over me. But
yeah.
you bought a horse. So what did you do? You
Well,
can't
yeah,
escape it.
our dream and our reality, they don't always mesh. And sometimes we think that we're able to create our put our dream and our reality together because we're like, oh, I'm finally financially stable to be able to purchase a horse. But my reality is I've had children, I've had all these experiences now as an adult that led me into a place that may have created fear, and we
Mhm.
didn't even realize it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so to answer your question, like what did I do? Like I think one of the best things for me that happened in this time frame um, was that when the trainer came home and I told him about this, he did what a lot of trainers do to most like consumers. He got
Mm.
on the horse, he walked trot cantered it. Let me let me ask you, do you think the horse bucked once?
No.
Nope. Not
Mm-mm.
once. But I got back on it immediately, and the horse was thinking about it. I didn't
Mm.
do it. I was petrified. I didn't lope, but I got back on and I could feel it. And while the guy was a good hand, he didn't give me any advice in the confidence direction other than get over your shit. And he said it much nicer than that. But um, the it was definitely something in which I was still interning with him for a while, right, during this time. So when I bought the horse and I brought him back to my place later on, it did take me that year. I had to backtrack, is the answer to your question. I had to backtrack. I tried to build a relationship. I was going through groundwork because there we didn't go through a ton of groundwork. And he allowed me to do groundwork with the horse to try to work through things. But there was such a massive disconnect. Like I could get the horse doing really, really well on the ground, but then riding, like he recognized what was going on in my world and in my inside me. And so um, there was a moment that it was kind of a turning point. This isn't, I'm going to say this, but I also need you to understand that when I say this, this is not the way for everybody, by any means. And I think what's important to this is that there are ways for every circumstance and individual. But what helped me in that moment was there was a morning that I woke up and I said, you know what, I'm tired of this shit. And I I said this saying aloud, and again, not for everyone, is if it's my day to die, then damn it, it's my day to die. I'm going to do this shit. So I got up and I just went, and like that immediately for me built that confidence. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. This is what we're doing. And that helped become more clear. That wasn't me becoming a dictator. That was me being more clear in my ask and what it was that I wanted, and withheld that confidence that I needed. Again, I preface it very heavily with that is not how everyone deals with that. And honestly, there are far fewer people that get over it from that mentality than than others. So that was mine. It worked for me, but that doesn't work for everybody. But it was what also led me on the journey to figuring out, well, it worked for me, but it doesn't work for everybody. So what does work for everybody? And
Mm.
that's kind of the journey then taken, because that was I feel like I'm saying my age here almost. That was 20 years ago. And um, I still have that horse. He's my best horse. He's retired now, but I could do anything. I can do anything off of him. He hasn't been ridden in well over a year, and I can get on him bareback, bridleless, and backwards and still do everything um,
Mm.
that he needs to do. But yeah, it led me on my journey to figuring out like how can I help more people.
Mhm. They always say the horses end up finding you, and there's
You
something in
found
that,
me.
right? There's
Yeah,
something in that. But there is also a real moment you described there with, okay, it doesn't work for everyone, of that, let's just get up and do it. I don't care about the consequence. But in a way, it's a decision, and
it is.
it's a decision that is really powerful. And I'm just gonna sidetrack it. The same thing happened I was in Dubai when the war hit. And I had loads of phone calls, people saying to me, "Oh, are you not scared? Are you not this?" And I had a very similar moment of I lived in 2 weeks of almost fear and uncertainty, like what should we do, what not? And it was one day where I decided, you know what? I had to decide, get on a plane and go back, or stay here and just crack on. Like just
Yeah,
just crack on. And
yeah.
it's such a simple and different example, but it's the same principle of I
Same
had to
principle.
make a decision. And with that decision, I was still in a war zone.
Yeah,
The danger was still there, but everything around me, perspective, how I showed up, how I even reacted to the alarms that went off on the phone was totally different. And
really.
you and I know that this is how horses they feel this,
Yeah,
don't they? They feel
absolutely.
this clear
Yeah,
decision in
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Fascinating. Really fascinating.
And that, would you say then that decision you made, like just from that point forward, you were good, or did you feel that you had to make that decision almost daily to be like, I need
No,
to make sure of it? No.
it was
So just
done.
that one decision, you took action, and you were like, this is it.
And it
Yeah,
then subsequently had a knock-on effect on everything, right? People ringing you saying, "Are you okay?" Before it was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." Then now it was, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like I've
yeah,
decided to stay. And
yeah,
almost very similar to what you said, we like had the decision of I was like, I'd rather be on the ground when it hits us than be in a plane. Like I almost brought some humor into it. Obviously,
yeah.
very serious situation, but I almost had to
You
bring
have
that
to.
in of like
Mhm.
decision made. I take full responsibility, move forward.
Yeah. We
Uh,
we talk about it all the time that you can't hold two emotions at once. It's actually impossible for you to hold like that. I'm fearful, and then I'm laughing and I'm happy
mm,
for that moment. There are plenty of times, and I always tell people like when they think that they can, I say, have you ever been crying, for a moment, and then somebody says something that makes you laugh, and all of a sudden you're laughing again, and then you're like, well, shit, I'm supposed to be sad, and I go back to crying again. You've changed states, twice right there, and so it's you bringing in humor into it is so great, and one of those things is exactly where I was able to make that change, because I said that the two most powerful things that you can do to overcome in the moment, and my biggest problem was I was always in the moment, and there always needed to be the preparation for the moment that I was missing for such a long time. But in the moment, I could either do one of two things. I could either be making jokes and make myself laugh, or making fun of or gamifying it, or I had to get angry. And I already had one of the things when I was younger that I struggled with was a bad temper. I had a bad temper that I would get angry off a drop of a hat type of thing. And so I was able to use the anger not in a way that I would pick a fight, but I would just get angry emotionally, and I didn't feel the fear during that time frame. But humor and anger are one of the most powerful ways to like get over it instantly if you can harness it correctly.
Mm. I've definitely heard that before. Someone who's done a lot of boxing and actually very similar of being in flow state, being present, and that's one of the things that boxing teaches you as well as horses, is that if you are thinking of something else, your reactions are slower,
Mm,
your decision making is slower, um, and when you have a fist flying towards your face, you only have one thing to
yeah,
do, to move out the way. And
yeah.
again, very simple, very
I mean, you have
but
a second thing to do. You can stand there and take it.
but it's that very simple thing of like being present, being completely clear, but also if you're going to have anger, which is one thing they said to us as well, like if you have the anger, channel it, like use it to
Mm,
move forward instead of sitting and festering in it. I know we're slightly divulging, but there's one thing you said there, which is I've got it written down here, which is the preparation replaces fear.
mm, yeah.
So, what does this preparation look like with you when you're, say, working with your clients one to one, and where did this come from? Because that is something I know you speak about a lot on your social media, but it's something I really resonate with myself. The preparation replaces fear.
Yeah, so preparation is such a huge thing, not only in the moment of or in like when you're with your horse, but then you got to start backtracking and you got to back it up 20 minutes before you ride. You got to back it up an hour before you ride. You got to back it up the morning of. You got to back it up the last when you first get off your horse from one ride. You got to be thinking about what's going to be happening on the next one. And that preparation really just means a plan. And when I talk about a plan, there's so many aspects that kind of go into it. It's not just like what are you going to do with your horse? It's also what mindset are you going to be in, right? What does the action that you're going to take, what mindset does it require? Does it require one where we think we need to go in with a calm, relaxed state of mind, or does what action you're going to take require you to have a little bit higher energy? We think a lot of times that being around a horse, we need to have this calm presence the entire time, and that's not fully accurate. Um, when you approach a horse, absolutely, but there are times where you need to work on understanding fluctuation. You need to understand that your horses are fluctuating energies all of the time. You need to be able to fluctuate along with them, because if you don't, you're going to get left behind overall. So I do think that it's really important that we create our correct mindset. Now, what does that take? Because again, you got to break down everything. What does it take to make sure that you're in the right state of mind? Let's say that you need to make sure that you don't have the fear or that you don't have the um, that anxiety. So you need to practice the mindset and how to get into it long before you actually get there. It's kind of like saying we were talking before we started about FIFA and soccer and football, and it'd be like saying I'm going to learn how to do soccer in or football in the game. I'm not going to practice it any other time, and I'm going to expect myself to be, at FIFA level, just like that. So what I always try to tell people, there's not enough mindfulness that people practice in understanding kind of our own brain and how to be able to not just clear it, because I think sometimes not everybody can clear their mind, but be able to control our emotions a little bit. So 10 minutes every day needs to become a non-negotiable. It needs to be something which every single day we are able to work on ourselves, put our devices away, maybe go for a walk, um, take away the distractions, and be able to try to tame the mind a bit. Exercise is a part of that as well. I do think that's really important to make sure that you exercise every single day, because you can tame the mind through exercise. It can help. And so if you don't practice that ahead of time, how do you plan on getting there and being in the right mindset? So if you know that, I know it's a long-winded answer, but I'm getting there. If you understand what mindset or how to get into it before you go and work with your horse, if you're feeling anxious, sit in your car for a few minutes or sit quietly at the barn, figure out how to bring yourself into the right state. Because the more you practice it, correctly, the more you're able to get back to it when it tends to leave, right? Even if it's, we were talking about a decision being made. If we made a decision like I'm just going to be okay with it, to some that doesn't always happen. Like you have to constantly make that decision, and to some you need to understand going back and forth is important with that. So not just your mindset. The last thing I want to talk about is the plan that you need to take that is actionable for each individual step. Instead of saying, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to ride my horse, what are you going to do? I'm going to walk, trot my horse. Okay. If I'm going to walk, trot my horse, back it up. What do you need to do to be successful walk, trotting a horse? And you back it all the way up. I need to do groundwork. What groundwork? You back that up, make it a checklist. Got it. Okay. I lunge my horse at a walk, just using it as an example. I lunge my horse at a walk. Okay, check. That was fine. Lunge it at a trot. Check. Now, if you lunge at a trot, your horse goes bad, right? It does something. What are the things, your horse by now? What are the things that could go wrong? And you write those down. If they go wrong, what do I do in that moment? Got it. Check. That worked. Create these checklists. Do only that plan. And what you're doing is you're stacking wins. Every time you check something off, that's a win. Your brain recognizes that as evidence. And when your brain recognizes evidence, confidence grows from the action taken. Most of us, like I would imagine you've probably heard this before. I just want to ride confidently. I want to have a good ride. And you say, "Well, what's that plan look like?" Well, I don't know. I just want to have a good ride. Well, if you don't even understand that before you go into it, you're chasing a feeling, not the overall outcome. And so I try to always teach my confident accelerated class people, like, stop riding for a feeling. Start riding with a plan, and the feeling follows. You take action, feeling follows. You can never be successful chasing a feeling overall. So that preparation, long-winded as it may be, is a part of that.
And where have you learnt this preparation checklist? Is this from?
That's a great question. So I read a lot. And uh, I'll sit here and say I read a lot. That's a lie. I audible a lot because my reading ability, I can read. My wife teases me that I can't read. I fall asleep within like reading 1 to 2 pages. So I audible, um, and I'm listening to books on tape all the time. Um, and so I am in love with learning about the human psyche, the brain, and how it works, and how it also correlates with horses. And it's also so fascinating how learning about the human brain, though the horse brain is different, you can correlate the two if you understand it correctly. And we don't do what I say one of the biggest, pardon me, problems is like anthropomorphizing horses, and we give horses human feelings. Um, so you have to correlate it, but you have to kind of correlate it correctly. You have to be able to read between the lines. So honestly, all of the books I get so fascinated over and learning that I
Mhm.
honestly went down a deep dark hole learning, and I had to back out because then the more I learned, the more confused I got. I had to kind of create a program as to how I would learn it.
Mhm.
um, because I felt the more I learned, the stupider I got.
Yeah, I always say that. Like the more I go down the rabbit hole, the more I'm like, oh my God, I know nothing.
And I'll tell you this quick story because that resonates so much. Is like I went down a deep dark hole of learning and understanding like the horse mindset and communication with the horse, that I remember a horse that I was doing all of my due diligence of things in which I learned, and none of it was working. And then I literally said to myself, I made a decision. I made a decision. I said, you know what, I'm old school in this shit. And I I was like, all right, I'm just gonna this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to, and it worked. The old school worked versus all of the shit that I was learning. And I thought that was that another turning point. I was like, okay, something's off here. We have to recognize that everything is can be tools in a toolbox versus your one set path. Um, and so anyway, that's your story kind of resonate or your comment resonated with that.
But it also goes down into what we are dealing with today as like the people we were in our 20s or in our teens growing up with horses. There's so much information nowadays. It's accessible, it's free, it's great. Everyone's either reading, listening, doing both on the phone, eating at the same time, blah, blah, blah. So it's like our minds don't actually know what to do with all this information. So we're totally like overstimulated. And I think that's one I find in the work that I do. Um, I've actually tested this with like my own little experiments with my morning
Oh,
routine and how much information I take on before I work with horses. That
okay.
the more I do, the less I find effective and distracted I am with the treatment versus the less I do in the morning, the clear-minded I am, the better and more effective my treatments are. And when people say like, again, being just shifting the conversation, I'm sure you can resonate. When you're working with horse and rider, like
Hmm.
as much as I'm focusing and asked to come and treat the horse for one-on-one, I'm still holding space for an owner. You're still
Mm.
taking in a lot of information, and that is a lot of brain thinking energy, which
Yeah,
I don't think we
100%.
we quite know how to, or no, there's no real understanding of how to process that. And
Yeah.
I say this a lot to my clients when they've had lessons with instructors. I'll say, "What did you learn?" And they look at me blank. They're like, "Well, it
They
felt
just
great."
followed the instruction, turn left, turn right,
Yeah,
go straight back
yeah.
up. Hmm.
And I
Gosh.
think that important skill is for all of us, no matter if you're equestrian or not, but the horses actually remind us of this because of their ability to bring us into the present. It's like,
Yeah.
God, we're gonna have to control how much we take in here because
Hmm.
it's affecting our ability to learn, process, and take action.
Yeah. And I think what's really important is from the very beginning of someone kind of taking action, but needing to take action for themselves. I always talk about it from like even the medical standpoint is like you have to take your health into your own hands half the time. And I don't want to get in trouble with the with certain worlds, but I will say that I don't feel that people care enough anymore about specifically to you. I mean, we could 100% get into it from the woman's perspective because I don't think that is even close to it. But you have to take your health into your own hands. And the same for the training is you have a dream. I want to ride a horse or I want to do X, Y, and Z. Again, you have to kind of have that goal and then you have to have that plan to kind of get to that goal. And I don't think that when people are taking lessons, they don't see how steps A through F are going to get them to Z and they're just following. They're like a drone and they follow what they're being told, but they're not thinking their way through it. They're not asking the important question of why. Why do I do this? Why does my horse do this? Why is my body acting this way? Why is my brain acting this way? And if you don't ask that question, it's really hard to get to the how do I then operate on
Mm,
my own and how do I operate, this horse or whatever.
mm, mm. I wanted to touch up base on confidence. I know that's one of your programs as well, and what you're very good at teaching online, keeping it very simple, which I love. But instead of focusing on, we know and understand, most of us recognize like lack of confidence in the rider.
Mm,
But sometimes it's the horse, right? That
yeah,
does feel unsafe, unprepared. So how can a rider tell whether the lack of confidence belongs primarily to themselves or the horse,
yeah,
or yeah, vice versa? Is this
yeah.
something that you teach or you look for?
Absolutely, but I will say that I probably teach it more on a situational basis because
Hmm.
it's hard to kind of have a hard line of like this is the horse, this is you. Because sometimes it was never the horse, it was the human that created this, but now the pathway that the horse has in their mind of a habit is now so ingrained that it is the horse.
Hmm.
And so then you need help, external help. So you grow confidence, but then you're still problems. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't look at it from a perspective of I look like I'd say the horse needs help, but I look at it from a knowledge perspective. A lot of times we struggle both in our confidence and our knowledge base. So humans, if we get in through there, into the we build our confidence, we're feeling good, but then our horse is still giving us issues. Then we start to question, well, what's the knowledge base? Why are we not being able to fix it? So then we have to break down and say, okay, well, what does the human know? Because I always look at it as like as a and for your podcast viewers, this visual might be a little bit hard one to see, but you can't ever have a horse and human grow together. I mean, it's plausible, but you don't see it often, right? Everyone in the horse industry higher up knows this information. So I always try and tell people if a horse is up here, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, if the horse is here but the human's here, you you can't, the human can't help them
Hmm.
essentially. In order to get the horse to be better or to fix a habit, you need to have a human that has a higher knowledge base to be able to help that horse overall. So even if you built your confidence and you're still having trouble, you might need to then start to recognize if I'm out of my wheelhouse in knowledge to be able to understand how to fix it, then it is still kind of the horse. Because we can get into kind of understanding. I'm going to try my best not to go down the dorky path.
Just go
So
for it.
I was pausing there for because I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to go down a tangent. So understanding like the concept of like neuroplasticity and one of the things that I more recently learned is how a habit of any kind, an action of any kind, is is understood in our brain. That's also similar to the horses. Is let's say a neural pathway is created, and when a a being takes an action of any kind, good, bad, or whatever, they create that pathway to understand it. And then what they do is they layer it with a thing called myelin sheath, right? So this myelin sheath, the more that they do it, the thicker, the more myelin gets laid onto it. So the more that it consistently gets laid, it's the pathway becomes more of a superhighway, if you will. So when we try and tell people like you can change a habit. The problem is the habit is never broken. That myelin sheath is never broken. It's 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 thick to an extent. Your job is not to break that habit. Your job is to create a new one and lay more myelin so that
Mhm.
way that's the go-to versus the other pathway, if that makes any sense. I tried to keep
Yeah,
that
it's
as
like
simple as
a
possible.
redirect. So the
That's
brain already
exactly it.
knows the pathway. It's built, it's established. I think there is research to show this that it's the first 7 years of a human's life where
Yep.
a lot of our behavior is done. Like we are
Yes.
conditioned. Those roads are paved, they
Oh
are
yeah.
fixed. So yeah, I mean, I'm guessing it's very much the same with the horses. And
It
a
is.
lot of
It
us
is.
don't have that privilege of having them since they were from a foal. A lot of
Yeah.
us buy them when they've already had 7 years.
And I think one of the things that people need to understand is that horses have, like, if I'm going to put this simply, horses have an MO that they'll always go to when an energy state is so high. Like they're super anxious or whatever, and they feel trapped or whatever. They'll always go to a buck, a bolt, a rear, whatever their MO is, the one that they feel is the one that gets them out. They will always go to it when the energy gets high enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so people are like, well, can you solve for the bucking problem? And I said, no, you can't fix the MO. When the energy is that high, it will always go there. What you can do is recondition how to regulate themselves when the energy gets that high. So you can bring them back down so they can have the pathways to, or you create pathways to bring them back down, is actually a better way of putting it.
Hmm.
So it's definitely, you can never change an MO. A horse will always go back to that one thing. And I think the more people can understand that, we can have a better path forward because we are a little naive half the time. We like, well, I'm just going to send it to the mechanic and he's going to fix my problems and then I'm good. That's just not the way it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of so many examples. When I started with the early days of horse behavior, horsemanship, natural horsemanship, going from flat racing into that. And we'd have people send us horses from all over the world, and it would just be like a crash course, like fix the
Mm.
horse in whatever time, fix the horse.
Yep.
Horse was never the problem.
Yep.
It we redirected, we built that trust relationship, we brought the owner back, and guess what happened?
I don't even have to guess.
Yeah,
I know exactly what
yeah,
happened.
exactly. It's a really and then another point as well, which is something we could maybe give the listeners an example of. I had when I left racing and went into dressage, I
Mm.
was given a beautiful Lusitano to ride, who was an ex-bullfighting horse.
Oh, I love
And
that.
he was beautiful. One of the most intelligent horses I'd ever dealt with. Just the
Yeah.
mind work, work, work. But obviously very highly strung and an ex-bolter. So he put a couple of people in hospital. And one of the things that I didn't know at the time, but now with knowledge and talking to people like yourself, it's understanding that I was told we'll put more gear on him to stop him bolting, because it's just for him he got his head just above a certain part of the vertical and he would go. Like it was I never got into
Yep.
that stage, but my goal every day with him was, and now I know it was to build a new path. And I
Yeah.
usually did that through fun and a bit of
Mm.
curiosity. And I
Okay,
think
tell me about that.
that's, yeah, I think that's something that a lot of us can actually do to help us, you can correct me with this, with our confidence, is to bring back
Mm.
some fun. Because when we are having fun, we're in a different, again, state.
Yeah.
You're in that curiosity. You don't mind a fail. You don't mind a
Yeah.
fall because you're having fun.
Yeah.
And that was a lot what I did with this horse was, and he knew how to do dressage. He was
Hmm.
trained to a high level, but he got to the point where people didn't know he didn't know how to redirect his energy but go. And so my
Hmm.
game with him was to notice before it got to that threshold and to redirect it. And that was usually with a bit of fun. Usually back with a
Uh,
little bit of a curiosity game in hand, would go for a, you know,
yeah.
walk or something like that, but just not complicated stuff. Like almost bringing in some pony club game kind of stuff.
I was going to say, can you give me an example of what, like, you're saying that you rec so first off, the recognizing ahead of time, that's precise. That's right on. How
Yeah.
did you then redirect it with fun? What does that mean? What did you do?
Yeah, so like for example, he had a go-to of like which I think people can resonate with, which is you're in the arena and suddenly it gets really tense. So you're building up to doing some flying changes. He knows what's coming. He can feel the collection, he can feel it brewing, and his back would lock. And
Okay.
me, that was like a first sign of I'm losing the energy. It's now stagnating underneath my seat bones. Can either go one way. So
Yes.
what I would do was just completely in training change. So I'd bring him back to a walk. Sometimes I'd get off him, and I would even go back to doing some setting up like some cones in the arena, and I would just weave him through the cones,
Mm.
either in hand or in walk and a saddle. And what it did, obviously, from a mechanics perspective of the spine, and as I was working through the paraspinal musculature, that was my chiropractic brain. But for him, it was actually bringing him back into we're safe, you're in a
Hmm.
safe space, and we're now going to redirect this energy with all 4 feet on the ground again, which for a horse that just wants to fly with no sense of self-preservation, for me, that was like, I need to bring him back into he's in a safe space. And we did that. Simple games. Even things like I had a whip, so I would then be like, okay, well, let's just play with this whip. So I'd move the
Yeah.
whip to certain parts of the arena, and he would
Mhm.
go from being fearful, wide-eyed, tension in the neck, to like, what we doing here? Like, what we doing with this
Yeah.
stick? And it
Yeah.
was for me just a change of energy. And then I'd go back to the changes, and they were fine. I was like, okay.
So it sounds like what you went through is something I call experience-based sessions or rides. And your focus was about the experience more
Mhm.
than it was about the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that that has such a profound effect on them because because that pathway to the overall experience is also there, and the
Mhm.
feelings, that pathway to the feelings in which they feel during that time frame is so heavily there. You broke it in its state and went to a different place, and I
Mhm.
think that that was absolutely amazing for you to recognize and to change it so drastically and into so many different directions. I think was such a huge thing. Um,
Do you
always
find
find.
that,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
that people don't, that you get the question, I get this, which is, how do I have fun?
Yeah, so that is a good question. And sometimes, again, you're chasing the feeling
Mhm.
more than creating an action.
Mhm.
So don't I mean, I always try and answer it from the perspective you can gamify it by doing things which you just said, creating maybe not for the bolter, but creating a fun little relay race or a fun, challenge for you to do. Fun will follow those actions, those games. Don't try and say I'm going to have fun. And I will also say, since it is something you brought up with fun, I 100% agree with you, but one of the hardest things I think is when people hear that, they're like, "Yeah, I just want to bring the fun back. I just want to have fun." But they're so far in another direction that fun can't overcome it. Like fun isn't enough for some. Does that make sense? They're so far gone. Like I just got done my last 3 month Confident Accelerator class. And it's funny, my very last lecture was talking about fun. But I even told them, I said, you notice that this is the last lecture, not the first lecture. Because the now you're at a place where you're like, oh shit, I can have fun. When you first started, if I said have fun, you would have told me to F off. You know what I mean? Like that, that's where they would have been. And so fun is 100% something that you can do, just depends where you are in your, say, your confidence level. You are at a place where you're like, okay, I recognize these things. Let's have fun. You were at that perfect
Mm.
why in the road type of thing to be able to do that. So I absolutely love that. Good job for you.
I also think there's a difference in which I see this across even with horses and dogs, which is I didn't have the emotional attachment because he wasn't my horse. He was
Mm,
a horse I was asked to ride because he had his issues and he was dangerous and it was almost like just sort him out because if you don't, then So I had the pressure, but one thing I remember with every ride is I had no expectation of him. So
mm.
so that really that was intentional from me again, and that was the same even with competing. Whereas I remember going into one of the dressage arenas doing I think it was our second advanced, and I was singing around,
Mm.
and I got called in by the judge and told not to sing, but my I was really my
You got called
conversation,
by the judge and was told not to sing.
yeah, because you had to. It was a distraction or whatever. It just
I understand. That's just funny.
wasn't allowed. I know, but my response was listen, this horse is an ex-bolter, and
Yeah.
this is where we're at with our training. Like
Mm,
if I need to sing and he needs to sing, we're gonna sing.
yeah.
Now yes, we could counter argue and say maybe that was more for me than him, and there's two
Yeah.
sides to every story. But my point being with it is that was my level of expectation. Even at that
Mm,
level, I was like, I'm in it for him. And if it
yeah.
means right now this is what we both need in our preparation to get this job done, it's gonna, listen, we progress from
That,
there, but that level of having no
yeah.
expectation, I think plays a huge part with
And
horses.
I think that really comes into as to talk about situationally too, because I think that's always such an
100%.
important thing, is where you were and the type of rider you were, you needed to create that no expectation.
Yeah.
On the counter side, there are people who lack such intention, such motivation, such that they need to have a sense of expectation because without it, they lack direction. And so finding that
Yeah.
that balance between one person and the other, which is what I think is what's wrong with the information that's given today. Coming full circle back to the beginning of this, we were talking about the massive amounts of information, is it's really challenging to weed through in information because what you just said holds so much weight in this gold, but then it could also be where that's detrimental to someone else. And so this is where I struggle so much sometimes is because of like I want to help the masses, but then at the same time, like the piece of information I might give here might
100%.
be the wrong suited information for someone who's listening or whatnot, which is why you almost have to sometimes kind of cover the gap and understand each individual has a situation separate to themselves.
Love that. So, can I give you an example of a situation which, again, I understand it can vary, but
Yeah.
the common one is pushy horses.
Oh,
Someone
yeah.
actually messaged this in and said, I've got a pushy horse. I've read that I need to be more confident. I need to be more
Mm.
like the leader, the dictator. But what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And where would you start with someone who's saying this,
Yeah.
this kind of statement to you?
Well, first, I love asking the question. I love asking questions first. So, I would start asking a lot more questions. What's happening during this time? All right, being pushy. That's a very vague statement,
Mhm.
and you need to kind of dial in a little bit more as to what specifically is going wrong, because then at the same time, the information that's given is I need to be a leader, or I need to, they're being the word that gets thrown around a lot is my horse being disrespectful, and I do my best never to use the words disrespectful or respectful anymore in my verbiage, because I feel that it is something that we have taken to the wrong direction. Respect anymore means you do what I say or you are disrespectful. It has turned into dictatorship overall. Am I making sense with that? So I feel that it's really important we don't use that verbiage, because it turns into that. What I find that when I try to help people is understanding where they lack when it comes to that communication. So my horse is being pushy. We need to figure out the why they're pushy first and foremost. And there are factors as to why. I always go into there are four main factors as to why a horse does anything, um, any action at all, good, bad, or indifferent. And so understanding those factors, and I spent an entire 2 hours lecture on that, so we're not going to get into that today. But the understanding the why is really kind of the first part. And to kind of keep it somewhat generalized for this conversation, I think that overall, the majority of people, what they lack is a word called intention. And so when they lack that intention, it is a struggle for them to be able to overcome anything. And the intention is we'll ask them a question like, well, what have you done? Well, let's say they've done X, Y, and Z exercises, say, get back, get away, back up, blah, blah, blah. But they're like, I don't feel like the horse listens to me. 90% of the time, I would say, and that's my own numbers, is that it's a lack of intention. They don't mean what they say, they don't say what they mean. They get a job done, but they don't actually mean it, so the horse feels that difference in it. But it doesn't necessarily require you to be a dictator to mean what you say. I can do this to my horse, for those listening, just put my hands up and the horse can understand my intention behind it. Whereas somebody else can be sitting there swinging a lead rope at him, or banging the stick on him, and they're not showing intention and the horse is ignoring it. So what it really comes down to is learning how to deal with your own intention and how to be able to fluctuate that intention. Horses, I say the big three words when it comes to working with horses are this: learning fluctuation, learning your own intention, and understanding how they perceive everything. Perception, we say, is nine-tenths of the law when it comes to humans. That's their reality. Their perception is their reality. It's why one horse can look at a tarp and be like, "That's nothing," and another one says, "That's a horse eating tarp." So you recognizing those three things and that intention, if you can learn how to fluctuate your intention, you can pretty much solve for any problem whatsoever. So I go back to the root of saying you need to learn how to mean what you say. Do you ever have it where, and I use this example as a humor, sense of humor, not as an actual this is what you do, prefacing that, is I was like, if I find out that they have children, I ask them, have you ever told them to ask them to clean their rooms, right? And if they say yes, and I said, do they listen on the first time? No. Do they listen on the second time? No. I said, is it usually where you have to take a baseball bat into their room and threaten them before they actually do it? And the answer is yes. I don't recommend it. I have children. I've thought about it, but I haven't done it. Anyway, so that's the intention, is You didn't go in and beat them, but you made them believe that that could happen. That is intention. And that's from a very aggressive standpoint, mind you. I'm not saying that you need to get to that point, but that is sometimes a way to resonate as to how to
Mm.
understand what we're looking for. So I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like I went a little bit around Robin Hood's way there, but essentially, if they can learn intention, they can learn how to communicate and say, "Hey, this is my space. This is my bubble. This is my layoff," and the horse can read that. But it's not about the exercise used. It's more about the intention behind the ask, if
Mm.
that makes any sense.
And for people listening, going, how do I build my intention skills? Do you do that as part of your program, or is that something that you have
Yeah,
built
so I
about?
always say do it away from the horses. You need to learn it away from the horses, not while you're in the moment of. This is the opportunity to practice on your husband, your significant other. The if you feel, I'm joking about significant other, but the if you feel that you struggle with intention, and actually, you know what, I'm going to back up. I would honestly say that most people don't tend to struggle with intention in their everyday life. They're just not made aware of it.
Mm.
So I ask a lot of times people what their job is. And honestly, those who struggle with intention with a horse, I would say 70% of the time they have a job in which they manage, 50 people, or they have this job that requires them to have intention. But there's a massive disconnect from when they go home from their job to what they then come out with the horse. And I say to them, this is that opportunity. How would you speak to this person to make them believe you? It's the same you would need to speak to the horse. Um, but it's also so it's an awareness and it's also an understanding of energy. And so one of the great ways of kind of think of it, I know you've seen it before, where you have somebody who's riding and they're riding a horse that's behind the leg, right? And they're kicking the shit out of it. They're kicking. The horse isn't going anywhere. You could probably get on, and within one or two kicks, they're like, go. And they're like, oh, do I just need a stronger leg? No, you do not. It has nothing to do with your leg, right? It has to do with the intention behind your ask. So it's understanding the energy. You could be, kicking as hard as you possibly can, but if your energy doesn't say go, the horse doesn't believe you. And
Mm.
so that's first about awareness and then understanding that fluctuation of energy and how you get to that point. I would, on some people, I focus on saying, hey, you're very low energy. Show me like your inner anger for like
Mm.
3 seconds and see what happens. That's not
Mm.
how I do it with everybody, though. Some people are show me the inner anger. Some people are show me a buildup. I also quantify things through numbers. This is the last piece I'll give when it comes to this is I would say give with your energy right now, put a number behind it. And let's say they need to get to an 8 with energy, right? A 10 is too drastic.
Mm.
They put a number behind it and they say, okay, I think right now what I'm giving, like if they're honest, I'm giving a 4. Okay, great, that's fine. Show me what a number 5 would look like in your mind. Like, what do you think a 5 would look like? Great. Okay, show me a 6. And I would sit there and say, well, that kind of looks like a 5 to me. What does a 6 look like? Like, really show me a 6 and build up to the point till they get to the 8. And then they recognize by putting the numerical value onto it, it helps them to isolate that in their mind, not just again the feeling of energy. What is that? It is more putting a this is this is the number that it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it goes back to your original point about that preparation,
Mm,
to go back to, okay, well, I know what this feels like because we've spoken about it away from the horse.
yes.
We've understood that feeling to a number that we can then go, okay, well, when I was a 6, this is the feeling with it. When I was a 10, okay, it was way too much.
Yep.
Like I scared the person next to me.
Yep.
So even if you're quite like a kinesthetic learner and you like that feeling, at least having it to a number, you can use it in a practical sense when it comes to being with your horse. The key
I love that.
takeaway though, do it away from your horse.
Key takeaway. I love that.
I've got two more questions. One is about
Yeah.
trust with horses.
Yeah.
There's so much advice about, trust your horse, which can be very vague. And again, I'm guessing very
Mm.
situational dependent as well. But from a horse's perspective, in the years that you've worked with horses and riders, but focusing on the horse here, what does trust actually look like for a horse? You know, what do we look for in riders or handlers or body
Consistency.
makers?
Consistency. Now, that's a vague answer. So I'll try and break it down too. But consistency, not just in honestly, not in the exercises done. So a lot of times we think consistency means like, okay, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z when I show up with the horse, meaning they have to trot this many minutes, they have to do this many. Not that. Consistency in how you show up mentally and physically. That I feel is what the horse then trusts. If they can trust that you are showing up correctly every single time, which in this day and age is hard as shit to do, that's where trust gets built. When you are not present with your horse in the correct manner you need to be present with your horse will disconnect with you so fast, even if you built up trust with them over the time. They judge that every day, every single moment you're with them. If you're disconnected with them for, I mean, I've seen it within a second. The moment you disconnect with them, they're on their own. They're so they believe, and so they're gone. Um, and so it even comes down to something so simple when to trying to just come up with like this one example when it comes to like trotting. So let's say you're trotting the horse, and most of the issues that people have with at higher speed gaits is because we are not actually at the same tempo or rhythm with the horse. And most of the time, people are behind their horse. And when they are behind their horse, what they're not recognizing is that they're actually they're creating a subconscious drive to say go faster, or to some horses it means shut down.
Mm.
And during this time frame, you'll see this is where you'll see most of the time like horses are going too fast, is because the person's behind their rhythm. Like it is common sense would dictate to us that says okay, my horse is going too fast, so I'm gonna post slower. I'm gonna do the rising trot slower to help him slow down. But what happens is you were never with him to begin with, so slowing him down by posting slower is means you're just behind the rhythm, and it's actually a driving force to go forward. If you then do to the point of this story is if you then speed your post up and you catch up with them, the moment that you fully disconnect too much, your horse was back to the races or back to not listening. And when I say too much, I quantify that again. So let's say 5 through 10 is your trot and the 10 is a canter. If your horse is going at a 7 and you want it to go to at a 5, you've been instead of posting at a 5, you post to a 7. You're like, I speed that post up. All right, I'm with them. Now,
Mm.
if you want them to slow down, if you go from a 7 and jump back down to a 5, instantly you're done. Like they're back on their own. That's how, like, you're disconnected with them. Or they're still paying attention and they're like, oh, you want me to go faster. So, anyway, my point is if I'm at a 7, they're listening to me, I do a 6. And if they listen to a 6, I can then do a 5. Um, and again, so I quantify it. Kind of I don't remember where the question was going. If I'm being honest, I got sidetracked. But um, yeah, this is how I kind of want to be able to recognize the connection overall with them.
Yeah. I do it similarly with when I'm rehabbing horses, again, situational dependent. But someone will say to me, when are they ready for the canter?
Mm,
And I'm like, how's the trot looking? Or when you're ready for the trot, I'm like, how's the walk looking? So like
okay.
my brain works with obviously the biomechanics. And for me, it's always like if the walk is good and I rate
Yeah.
it as well, and we're feeling like together, and again, it's scale. So we have what we're looking for when it comes to biomechanics. It's then the horse will now trot. So it's like breaking it down for people so they recognize that it's going to happen. The horse knows how to canter, but we just
Yeah.
have to prepare better
Yeah.
ourselves with the horse even though we are rehabbing. And I find it very much the same, but just in a different situation, which is obviously like rehab. And yeah, I think the
Yeah,
point we're both making, which is the consistency is the key thing with the trust, because we would be lying to ourselves if we said we woke up every day feeling the same. I certainly don't. Some days it's a different feeling altogether. But what's
sure.
really helped with awareness exercises and working with quote unquote behavioral problem horses, which, okay, um, I've really quickly realized how much of an impact I can either escalate that
Mm,
behavior or they can escalate my behavior in the morning. And
yeah,
so, therefore, I owe it to my horse and my clients to show up more consistent. And that then builds that foundation for obviously what I do with the body work, but that's fundamentally
hmm,
down to a lot of trust as well. So yeah,
sure.
that's a great question of your answer about being super consistent with ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. It's how we show up. That's how we're gonna build their trust in us.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
then to finish up, why
yeah.
I asked this question, which is what's the one thing that horses have taught you that you don't think you could have learned anywhere else?
That everything in life is a balance, and at the same time, to an extent, while there is similarities with each situation, there is everything is situational
Mhm.
because you're dealing with a personality in both the horse and the person, and then their connection overall.
Mhm.
But ultimately, that everything is a balance. And if you don't understand how to find that balance, there will always be problems. And I think that is something that we as humanity have struggled with for so long. So it's going a little more philosophical than the horse aspect, but ultimately, I don't think I would have recognized just how much of a balance. And when I say balance, I more mean how you as the human have to understand and like understand the situation and fluctuate to the situations happen or change or modify or adapt to the situation. It's not the same every single time. How you as a communicator, because at the same time you're a teacher, you recognize to some people you maybe have to speak in a certain way, and then to others you have to change.
Mhm.
And each person is different, so you have to modify, change, and adapt. But you're creating a balance. You're creating a balance in how the person learns, how the person understands, and that balance is honestly, to me, everything in life. And so I always bring it back to there's just not enough balance in our everyday life.
Yeah, and that really resonate with me through everything, right? I think we started even this before we started recording today. It's like I was saying that I've had like 6 weeks of traveling, moving like countries, clinics, and to rebalance myself, regulate whatever word you want to use, I've had to slow down.
Mm,
I've actually had to tell myself, you've got to stop.
yeah.
Um, and in this day and age, I find it increasingly hard. Like I have to put it in the diary, which again, I think our ancestors would be laughing at us because they're probably going, you guys are just
But
running
our
yourself.
ancestors only had to worry about being eaten. They didn't have to worry about the same things that we have to worry about now. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
No,
But
that's such a great one. Go
for
ahead.
how you show up with the horses, right? And it's a great reminder. I really resonate with what you're saying. I've not had that answer before. Um, but it would help with the trust because it'll help us be
Yeah.
more consistent. So it's like it filters down into so many more aspects of working with horses, but also our lives. Because I don't know where we decided to think that we always need to be running at a million miles an hour, doing everything on the to-do list and acting like everything's fine
Yes.
when that
Well,
honesty.
we've been conditioned that way.
Mm,
I think a lot of times this world has conditioned us to that. But when you look at things like the top CEOs and they're off vacationing for weeks at a time, you're thinking how in the hell can you
yeah.
do that? But
Mm,
their direction to noise ratio is much different than than us because we've gotten conditioned in that manner. That if we don't rush, 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 we're not going to be able to accomplish the things. When we don't recognize how important, like we don't pull out the most important things. We value almost all of these things to be the same importance. And so that then builds even more anxiety within ourselves. So recognizing again, like I've got this is the most important thing to do today. This is all I have to do. And once I've done that, I'm done.
And
When
I
have
guess
we set off from that?
I'm thinking about the Scott that bought this horse, the horse we spoke about in the start of this conversation, and how, what your kind of daily goal with him was, and that also bringing that back down a peg or two to
Yeah.
meet your horse where you were. It was
Yep.
probably a huge like shift in balance as well, which I think is important for people to recognize that like where you currently are right now, whatever struggle you're having, like it's not going to be forever. Like when you learn about where you're trying to go, have a plan, prepare for it, but actually realize that you're not going to be stuck here forever. It's going to shift. Nothing
Yeah.
in life is permanent. That's one thing for all of us. We're here for a short time.
Yeah. No, it's and a lot of it comes back to that decision. You talk about, not everything's going to stay the same forever, even though a lot of times we'll feel like it is, right? We've been at this for a month, a year, whatever. You feel like it's the same, but you also can be the deciding factor to make that change. It's being able to find that place to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm making this decision. And because first step is making that decision, then taking action. And as soon as I take action, I'm headed in the right direction or headed in a new direction, whether it's right or not, doesn't really matter. You're headed in that new direction.
Mm.
So yeah, the Scott who 20 some years ago was doing this, I made so many mistakes and I at some points I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed from what I once said long ago from those things because it was really just a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. But instead now because I for a while I would get embarrassed, especially we were talking about YouTube videos and I look at like old stuff and I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? But now I recognize I was in a phase where I was teaching a tool, how to use a tool in a toolbox, but that was not everything. And I think
Mm.
that's kind of crucial for understanding.
Mm. Yeah, I can really resonate. I look back at my old photos now and videos and everything was about chiropractic, being straight, being symmetrical, and now I that is like abolished. It's like not even in my vocab. But in a way, I'm like every it was the stepping stone I needed to get to where I am, and also
Bingo.
it's provided me when someone now comes to me everywhere, anywhere, says to me about symmetry, it's something now that I can fully feel confident talking about why I don't do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's like you had to have gone through that in your little confidence bubble to then have it burst to realize, okay, well,
Yep.
it's okay.
It's your journey. It's your journey that you're create that you're on. And I think far too often we get, and I say this more from a personal perspective too, but we get embarrassed about our journey. Like, I can't believe we did that or whatnot. But your journey landed you here,
Yeah.
right? Whether you like it or not, then you can change your journey to land you in a different location. But we should never be embarrassed for our own journey. Everybody's on their journey at a different place. And that's like when we teach clinics, you teach clinics too. You have people coming in from different parts of their journey, and you need to be able to help them with where they are in that moment. And that's okay. You can have a more advanced person, you can have a very beginner person. Neither should be judged because that very advanced person, guess what? However many years ago, they were in that exact boat,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly it. Scott, if people want to reach out to you, you've mentioned your confidence program as well. Where can they do that and how can they contact you?
So we have obviously social media, which is how you and I met. So you can find it through our TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Our Facebook's our largest following. And if you just look up Advantage Horsemanship with Scott Purdum, that is one of the best ways to do it. And obviously through our website, that advantagehorsemanship.com.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.